Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today, I'm so excited to talk to O Zelinsky, an illustrator of children's books. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Dan. I'm really glad to be here.
I just love this new book, which we will get to in a minute. Tell me about how many books have you illustrated?
Oh, well, that's a numbers question. I can't remember numbers, and I also don't really want to know the number of books illustrated because I wish it were more. I've been doing it for so long. Thought the number should be higher, but it's in the 40s. And so I can't say which one Cinderella and a Mouse Called Fred is, but it certainly is the new one.
That is amazing. Have you been an artist or an illustrator your entire life?
Well, I guess so. I always am not sure that being an artist is like a high thing to measure up to, I think, but I've always drawn. Yeah, I've always been the kid in class who doodled all over the place. And
I love that. I learned to draw one thing, and that was Speedy Gonzalez, because he was on the board all year long in Spanish class, and it's the only thing that I can draw really, really well. So my hat is off to you because I don't do that. You never have to worry about me trying to take your job.
And I'm not drawing Speedy Gonzalez lately.
Perfect. We make a perfect pair. So let's talk about Cinderella and a Mouse Called Fred. So you wrote this, or you illustrated this, and Deborah Hopkinson. Mm-hmm. And had you worked together before?
No, this was our first time working together, but I've known her for a very long time. She's been around as a children's author, and I've run into her at conferences and things like that.
Did the two of you decide to buddy up on the book, or is this something that comes through a publisher?
No, yeah, it is really almost always how it works. That she wrote the story and had it accepted by Random House, by Anne Schwartz Books. Anne Schwartz is a great editor there. And then Anne and I have worked together too, and Anne thought I would be a good match for the manuscript. So that the editor in a publishing house likes to function as a matchmaker. And so it doesn't usually happen that that an author and an illustrator come in together, but it can happen. And then we work separately, really. So the manuscript was finished with Anne and Deborah, and then it was sent to me. And that's when, and my work on it was very collaborative, but it really was mostly collaborative with the editor and the art director.
That's amazing. I think it's something that seems to be different, at least in my mind, than what happens in a lot of business situations. I think most people collaborate together, and then here is someone has finished one part and then the other one comes in. Maybe that happens in music as well? I don't know, but it seems to be something rather unique.
You're probably right, and I don't know about music either, but I like to think of it as being good for the final book, because the editor is really a creative participant too, and everybody is working toward making the book and the story be as fun and as exciting as it can be. And you can get around, authors can have preconceptions. Illustrators, if they're working directly with the author, might feel like they have to go with the author's ideas about how things look, and maybe there are better ideas that they come to on their own. So in the interest of the story.
I think that's wonderful. I really do. I think it's something unique, but I do agree with you that, for those of us with strong personalities, we come with an opinion. I'm only talking of myself in this minute. So I would imagine that if I collaborated with an illustrator, that I would be I would probably not be helpful. I would have my own preconceived notions where I like this. And then of course the editor is the person who brings a work together in the book world anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think Anne did a wonderful job in keeping the book funny and lively. It's a Cinderella story, but it's not the standard Cinderella story.
That's one of the things that's so wonderful to in today's world. We are seeing a lot of retelling of older stories, things that have been accepted, but giving them new and fresh twist. What's something fun about this? It's a little different than the ordinary telling of Cinderella.
Well, okay. First of all, I want to say that I've done both with fairy tales. I've made kind of some. I've had some success with the fairy tales that I've illustrated very seriously without a twist exactly, and they're not funny. But Rapunzel and Rumpelstiltskin and Hansel and Gretel were books that I illustrated trying to be like a Renaissance master of painting. And Cinderella and a Mouse Called Fred is totally the opposite. I happen to have it here, so I can
Yes,
hold it
I
up.
love it.
It's very silly and it's cartoony, and it starts out as the Cinderella story with the fairy godmother, and it's told from the point of view of the mouse whose name is Fred. But it ends up that Cinderella is not particularly interested in this prince, who is not very interesting. In the classic story, he may not be that interesting really ever. But Cinderella is a pumpkin farmer. She's her avid hobby is raising pumpkins for showing in fairs. So when she meets the prince, and the prince has zero interest in farming. Like, who wants this? She says, and she storms out later as she tells Fred the mouse, who becomes a horse and then a mouse again. So, and then maybe the biggest twist from the point of view of adults, but I don't think so much of children, is that after she stalks out of the castle and the prince does not find her with the glass slipper, she enters her new pumpkin in a fair and wins first prize and falls in love with the second prize winner, who is another female pumpkin farmer. And they live happily ever after together, which, you get my
Which
point.
is wonderful because different children will get to see themselves in different ways. So their children gravitate to stories that they like and stories that they feel represented in. And this is a wonderful change up. And there are going to be lots of children who are like, I identify with this. I am more like the prince. I'm not really interested in putting my hands in dirt, but but I love the fact that Cinderella finds a love that matches what she wants, and that's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are lots of ways to look at it too. I mean, the children who need that kind of representation will see it. Children who don't need that kind of representation will also be able to feel represented by Cinderella, who follows her passion, who falls in love with a farmer. Why not? So
Absolutely. That is one of the things I told Paul. I told you before we started recording that I buy quite a few children's books, and the reason I do that is because I think that in today's world, children's books represent all different kinds of slices of life, and they're all different kinds of representations. And I don't feel we had that as much growing up as there's available today, or at least I didn't anyway.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. It's been a long road, but the breadth of humanity that's represented in children's books is way bigger now than it was even 5 years ago. It's been slow to catch on, and I think people have fought very hard to make this happen. And it's an evolving world, and I hope that it keeps evolving and doesn't slip back.
I agree, and I think that we have a lot of illustrators and authors out there like you who are, keep moving the ball forward. It's important, and I find that a lot of publishing houses, they realize that children's books can sell and do sell. They do quite well, and that's a good thing. So it's a positive. I'm loving it.
Yeah, so there continue to be children, and they continue to love books. I mean, reading books to a little kid is one of the great pleasures in life because they take to it so well. I mean, and every kid should glom onto books, and it's been very fun making this book and coming up with the pictures, like the biggest pumpkin I've ever drawn, but also the most alarming transformation scene when the
That is so
turning
true.
into a horse, unbidden. He really didn't ask for this.
That is true, and that's a cool thing about this story. It's told from Fred's point of view, and Fred sees things very differently. I love at the beginning, one of the things that Deborah did is she gave Fred a nice friend in Cinderella. And that was a nice thing because Cinderella wasn't afraid of Fred. So, and then she says, well, I have some bad siblings and we also have a cat. So maybe you don't come to the house. And it was so cute because it was something that everyone can relate to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even with that, the first scene where Fred is thinking about Cinderella, the fairy godmother has appeared and it says that she's looking for a pumpkin for Cinderella. And Fred says, oh, Cinderella, I know her. And where he first met her, she was carrying a shovel, but she decided not to smash him dead. and here was where the influence of the editor, Anne Schwartz, came in. It was Deborah wrote the line, but I was kind of hesitant with Cinderella holding the shovel to have this be the pose.
Yes.
Let's not get into that. But Anne said, no, yeah, do it. So, because that's what the mouse is thinking about. That's what they want.
Well, and that's true. And I think that comes out so wonderfully in your illustration and Deborah's words, and the fact that this is a situation that Fred typically should be very worried about, but that's not what it turns out to be. It turns out to be they become buddies, and that's a good thing.
He's a very self-possessed mouse, I think, as mice go, and he's very a really good mouse. He as a horse, he comes very close to trampling a whole lot of other mice who are crossing the road, who are relatives of his even. So it's very dramatic, this scene.
It is, and there again, the illustrations so wonderfully match what's going on. So, and they were, as you said, fun, a bit whimsical, just an enjoyable thing. When Fred turns into a horse, though, that is really one of the supreme drawings of the book. So,
well, thank you very much. I actually drew it quickly, and then later I looked at it and saw that I'd been like channeling this famous painting by Picasso. A lot of people, artists that I know, look at it and say, "Oh, you did now I'm having a brain meltdown." But this painting of the Spanish Civil War, that was Guernica. It's called Guernica. Yeah. So there are horses in there with faces that are an awful lot like Fred's face. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean it, but it came out that way.
Well, I think if you're going to not copy, but if you're going to be influenced, you should be influenced by a master. So I think that's all right,
Okay, and Pablo is Spanish for Paul. So we're both
right. I like that. That's true. That's very true. So do you how fun is it when you get to go to book signings and to meet the kids and they're adults.
Oh, it's just wonderful. It's one of it's so fun that I've heard stories quite a few times about people. These days there are a lot of children's books get written by celebrities and people who aren't part of that world and just dip a toe in, but then they go to a school and talk about their book, and they come away, they can't believe how exciting and wonderful it is to get the reaction from kids who are so their enthusiasms are 100% and pure and real, and it just, there's nothing like a happy audience of kids. So I'm going to be doing a few things here, but I want to tell you one little thing. When I'm working on a book, I finish it. I can't stop. I keep going. I want to do other things that make it even more fun for me. So I've started making fabric patterns that go with the book. It began when I would do an end paper, maybe of a novel, and it looked like a pattern. I would think, oh, this would be cool if it were a real pattern. And then as time went on, I learned Photoshop came into existence, and there are ways to make things that into absolutely perfect repeating patterns. And then I did it. And then now there are ways to have it printed on fabric. So I had I've done this. This is a fabric that I've had printed of Cinderella and a mouse called Fred. And I don't know if you can see close.
That is amazing.
It has pictures from, it alternates pumpkins and pictures from the book. And I'm having, this fabric was just made into a shirt for me, which I'm planning to wear if I go at bookstore signings.
I love that.
Better, I had this book. I'm dedicated this book to my daughter and her wife, and they have a 4-year-old son named Norman. And I had another matching shirt made for Norman. So I'm in the fall. We have plans, not a date yet, but it's in Barrington, Rhode Island. Anybody who hears this in Barrington, Rhode Island, check out the Barrington books, because now they have to do it.
And I'm sure they will.
I'm going to go there and sign Cinderella and a Mouse Called Fred, wearing my Cinderella and a Mouse Called Fred shirt. And Norman is going to come with me, my 4-year-old grandson, wearing his matching shirt. So that's a way that I can continue the fun of making books long after I'm done making them.
I think that's amazing, Paul. That is so amazing. You're going to have to make pillows as well.
Well, actually, I wasn't meaning to bring this up, but the website that allows fabric printing.
Okay.
Now it's pretty well known by now. It's called spoonflower.com.
Okay.
And they've started having, it's also it's like Etsy. It's like a marketplace too, so that if you make something, if you make a pattern, you can have it printed for yourself, but you can also have it made accessible to other people to see. And then now you can actually order things being made from this fabric. So I ordered, yes, you can get pillows of this. And there are other, I even had other Cinderella patterns from this book, and you could find it on Spoonflower, but you could order a pillow. And I had tea towels made from the patterns, and so I could give them to the art director, Nicole de la Harris, and to Ann Schwartz, the editor. So
I think that's magnificent.
Yeah.
That's so unique. I love that. So not only do you get a book, there are other things you can get with Cinderella as well, and Fred. I love it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's silly. It's the book is the important thing.
Yes. But it's a wonderful extension, and that's something I really do applaud that. I love that.
Thank you.
Do you have a website or social media you would like to share?
Well, yes, I do, actually. You're supposed to these days. So my website is paulozelinsky.com, all one word, and my middle initial O I always use from the first book. I've started using it with my books. So it's paulozelinsky.com. And that's Paul O Zelinsky is also my handle on everything pretty much. So I have a Facebook page, which is Paul O Zelinsky Illustration, I think, and on Instagram. Instagram is where I post not so much books sometimes, but also I do a lot of doodling for no reason at all, but that's on Instagram. So yes, those I think. And shall I say it? I'm still on what used to be Twitter.
You
I'm
can
not,
definitely say that.
I had the blue check until they took it away, and I'm darn it, I'm not going to pay for another one.
No, same way. It's okay. I know it's free. I know you get to use my information, so I consider it to be sort of we're in partnership together, but I'm not paying you nor giving you my personal information so you can give me a check. I can make a check on there, or at least in a picture anyway.
Right, it's like that, right? So those are my social medias. I think anything that else, just if you look for Paul O Zelinsky, it's either me or somebody pretending to be me.
Show us that wonderful book again, Paul, if you will.
Okay. Here's the back.
There you go.
And here's the
I
front.
love it. I love it. Cinderella and a Mouse Called Fred. It is such a wonderful book. Highly recommended. And thank you so much for joining me, Paul.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Hang on for me just a second.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at outwithdan, and on Instagram and Facebook at Go Out with Dan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.